The winter evening was cruelly cold, and the city seemed wrapped in a heavy silence, broken only by the sound of rushing cars and distant horns. In the corner of a dimly lit street stood a young woman named Amina, clutching her thin shawl tightly around her fragile frame. Her shoes were worn out, soles cracked, and the holes let in the cold like sharp needles against her skin. She had not eaten a proper meal in 2 days. Hunger gnawed at her insides, louder than the traffic, louder than her trembling breath. Life had not always been this way for her. Once she had a home filled with laughter, parents who cared, and dreams that sparkled like stars. But a fire had stolen all of that. Her parents were gone, her belongings reduced to ash, and the only thing that remained was her determination to survive. She had no one to turn to, no relatives willing to take her in. So, the streets became her home, and survival became her daily battle. That evening, she stood outside an elegant 5-star restaurant where golden lights shimmered against glass windows, and the aroma of rich foods drifted out every time the door opened. She watched as people dressed in fine clothes laughed, clinked glasses, and ordered dishes she couldn't even pronounce. She wasn't envious of them. She only wanted the smallest scrap, a little leftover to silence the hunger clawing inside her. With hesitant steps, she walked toward a tall man who had just exited the restaurant. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, shoes polished like mirrors, and a heavy coat draped across his broad shoulders. His presence commanded attention, and his stern face made him seem untouchable. He was a man used to power, wealth, and respect. His name was Zayn Malik, a billionaire known across the country for his empire of businesses. But Amina did not know who he was. To her, he was just another customer who had eaten more than enough and perhaps had something left behind. Summoning every drop of courage left in her, she stepped forward, lowered her eyes in humility, and whispered softly, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" Her voice was so faint, it was almost carried away by the wind. Zayn paused mid-step, his hand reaching for his car door. At first, he thought he had imagined the voice, but when he turned, his sharp eyes fell upon her fragile figure, skin pale, cheeks hollow, eyes large but sunken with pain. There was something haunting about her, yet something pure and unbroken in her gaze. For a long moment he simply stared. He was a man who had seen beggars on every corner, people asking for money, for food, for help. He had built walls around his heart, convincing himself that if he helped one, there would be 10 more, and if he opened that door, he would never stop giving. So he stopped caring, stopped looking too closely. But tonight her eyes did not let him walk away. Amina repeated, a little louder this time, though her voice trembled with shame, "Please, sir, may I have your leftovers?" Zayn felt something stir within him, something he hadn't felt in years. He tried to harden his heart, tried to dismiss her with the excuse that he was late for a meeting. But when his eyes met hers, he saw not just hunger. He saw a story, a cry for dignity, a plea for life. For the first time in years, Zayn Malik hesitated, and in that hesitation a miracle began. Instead of ignoring her, he asked, "What's your name?" The question startled Amina. No one had asked her that in weeks. To the world she was invisible, a nameless shadow wandering the streets. Slowly, she whispered, "Mina." Zayn studied her carefully. He noticed the way her hands trembled, the way her lips were cracked from dryness, the way she tried to stand tall despite the obvious weakness in her body. Something inside him broke. Without a word, he turned back into the restaurant. Amina stood frozen, confused, sure that he had dismissed her. Shame washed over her like ice, and tears burned in her eyes. But before she could walk away, he returned, with a bag full of freshly packed food, not leftovers. He handed it to her gently and said in a calm but firm voice, "No one deserves just leftovers." Her lips parted in shock. She clutched the bag as though it were a treasure, her eyes flooding with tears she could no longer hold back. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen, human, worthy of kindness. She tried to thank him, but her words broke into sobs. Zayn, a man who rarely lingered, found himself standing there watching her cry. Something inside him shifted, a memory long buried resurfacing. Years ago, before the money, before the empire, he too had known hunger. He too had once asked for help and been humiliated. Perhaps that was why fate had placed this girl before him tonight. "Eat," he said softly. "And if you need more, come here tomorrow." That night, Amina sat under a small shelter and opened the food. The aroma alone made her dizzy with gratitude. She ate slowly, savoring each bite as though it were the most precious gift in the world. And as she did, she whispered a prayer. for the stranger who had shown her kindness when she least expected it. But what neither of them knew was that this single act was only the beginning. The girl who had asked for leftovers and the millionaire who looked into her eyes were about to change each other's lives in ways neither could have imagined.